Welcome to the semi-annual quarterly report. It is a bright Sunday, still seems like Sunday, Monday morning, and I'm glad you're all here. We have a really full hour today, so we're gonna run through some really good information. Tell you real quick what we're gonna do. We're gonna be talking about transportation plan. That's why all these transportation guys are up here. We're going to talk about the propositions coming up for an election here in a couple of weeks. And this wasn't originally planned, but because of the water situation, Michael's here, and we're going to talk water for just a few minutes as well. I hate to pass up an opportunity to talk about water since we're in the situation. Let me introduce the council members that are here. Councilmember Craig Morgan, I see. Councilmember George White. Councilmember Joe Clifford. And last but not least, of course, because I want to ask Chris something. And Councilmember John Moman. You were sitting behind Bill, sorry. You're right behind Bill, John. And Councilmember Chris Whitfield, who has a really wonderful announcement about, there was this Mayor's Cup, is this public yet or can I say? Yes. Okay, there was this Mayor's Cup golf tournament yesterday to help Hope Alliance, right? And so all the mayors of the surrounding cities had to get a female golfer to play in this. And our female golfer was? Kathy Stammons. Oh. And Kathy won, right? So the Round Rock golfer won by, what, 13 strokes or something?
She's bringing home the cup.
She's bringing home the Mayor's Cup. That's great. Steve Norwood, if you'll run up our city manager. Steve's going to introduce real quick. We've got a lot of new faces. Steve's done a great job. Do we have a mic?
Oh, the podium?
Oh, okay.
Okay, does that work? Okay.
You're not much on podiums, I know.
Okay, well, first of all, good to be here a little early for a Monday. But we do have some staff here, and I'm Steve Norwood, City Manager. I've been here about 8 months, and there's a lot of new faces at City Hall. Sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes there's some transition, and I think we're all handling it very well. But Laurie Hadley, my Assistant City Manager, she's been here about 5 months. In that position, Gary Hutter is our new Transportation Director. We've got Daniel Salcedo, our IT Director. David Coatney, I don't believe is here, but he's our new Fire Chief. He's been here about, well, a day before you got here, Laurie. Also, Michelle Cervantes, the Library Director, she's new. And, of course, Courtney Nielsen right here is the Executive Assistant to the Mayor and Council. And also new in her position is Monique Adams, who is Assistant to the City Manager. She's been with the city for quite a while, but she's fairly new in that position. I think Michael Thane is probably notorious, or you're in the ink every day, Michael, and he'll be giving you some information on our update of our utility system, which I think is handling it better than most cities, considering the circumstances that we're in. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the mayor, and away we go.
Thanks, Steve. I just wanted to make sure that everybody had a chance to meet all the great new faces. You know, there was an article in the paper yesterday, Michael, I think it was yesterday's paper, about the drought and everything, and Michael had his name changed from Thane to Payne. I'm thinking that's so people couldn't reach him at home. Sharp, man, really sharp. Okay, at the August retreat this year, we had a transportation presentation that literally lasted hours, and we're not going to have one that literally lasts hours this morning, but we all walked out of there. It was very detailed, extremely comprehensive, and we walked out and said, wow. That was impressive, and we need to get that out to the public, and this would be a good forum to do that. And in order to do that, they're going to have to, again, it can't be hours, but they have literally the transportation guys have spent months looking at priorities and what we need to do from a transportation standpoint. And so I'm going to turn it over to Gary Hutter to start with, our new transportation director, and if you would, we're going to get through all these and we'll do questions and comments at the end. So Gary.
Thanks, Mayor. Good morning. Just quickly, background, I was not here for the presentation, so unfortunately for the guys that did all the hard work, I get to show up at the end and jump to the front of the parade. So I've apologized to them in advance, and I'll continue to do so. The guys have put a really, really dynamic program Fourth, something that was exciting for me as the new director to jump into, and we've kind of modified it a little bit, so we're not here for several hours, as the mayor said. And so with that, we'll jump into it. John Dean is our transportation planner. Chad Wood is a traffic engineer with us, and Todd Kelchin is operations manager. He runs all of our maintenance on the ongoing program, maintaining the streets that we have in the system already. So, John?
Thank you. As Gary said, if those of you that, I know a lot of you in the audience, but those of you that don't know me, my name's John. I'm with the Transportation Department. I've been there about 5 years as transportation planner. Prior to that, I was with the City of Bryan as transportation planner there. As the mayor alluded to, this presentation took about 4 hours at the council retreat, and we've shoved it down into about 20 minutes. So it's really kind of higher level now. If we don't get a chance to answer your questions, or after you get a chance to mull over it and think it over some, and you want to ask me some more questions or something, I'm gonna leave my cards back there at the table. As you go out, you can give me a call, and we can talk through things. So, 4 months ago, back in May, the city manager called us, the transportation guys, myself, Chad, and Todd, into his office, and he had a talk with us about transportation. And what he said is that since he's been here, transportation has been the #1 thing that citizens have been talking to him about. From complaints, concerns, things like that. And then as he started looking at the financials, he realized that we had a significant fund balance in the Type B funding. That's the funding, by the way, that we use to fund a lot of the arterial type roads in the community. So his direction to us was to come up with a 5-year plan of prioritized transportation projects. And so what you're about to see represents the culmination of that 4 months of work that we did. So we started out with 4 questions that included where have we been, where are we now, and where do we want to go. In order for this to be a comprehensive evaluation, we looked at the first 2, where have we been and where are we now. We took a look at those to see where we've been so that we know where we need to go. You might recognize that. That's our transportation master plan. It represents the road network that we're going to need in this community at build out of the community. So when we hit our ultimate 250 to 300,000 people, this represents the road network that we're going to need to support that population. Now, a lot of those roads, or some of those roads, excuse me, not a lot of them, have been built already with Type B funds. Some of them are under construction now, and some of them will be under construction in the near future. This map represents roads that we have actually constructed with Type B funds or are under construction with Type B funds. The green lines represent roads that we have built that are complete and they're open, and then the red lines represent roads that are currently under construction. As you can note, there's a pretty heavy orientation to the east side of town. Well, that didn't escape us. We noticed that too. There's a couple reasons for that. One of them is that, quite frankly, things are easier to build on the east side of town. You don't have to contend with the Edwards Aquifer on the east side of town, whereas on the west side of town you do. On the east side of town, there's a lot more greenfield. Roads are easier to build, whereas on the west side of town, there's a lot of stuff that's already built out. Neighborhoods have been in place for the last 20 years, so when we try and put an arterial road through there, we're having to snake it between neighborhoods and snake it around houses and things like that, so it gets much more difficult. In addition, on the west side of town, there are a lot of you are probably aware there's a lot of environmental constraints. There are what are called karst features, which are caves. A lot of those serve as recharge features that get water back into the Edwards Aquifer. They also serve as a place for little invertebrates to live, endangered species, which we have to work around because of the federal government, and those can have significant impact on what we do with the road. So from there, the next thing we did is we decided to prioritize transportation problems rather than projects first. And the reason we did that is because we realized very quickly that a lot of the problems that we have in this community cannot be solved immediately. They take incremental steps to improve them. Some of the problems that we have in this community could take every dime that we have over the next 5 years, and they still wouldn't be fixed. As an example, the problems that we have with I35 could take every bit of funding we have over the next 5 years, and they still wouldn't be complete. And we were concerned about it wouldn't be equitable to spend all that money on one particular road here in the community without spreading the money around somewhat. And so realizing that, we said, well, let's prioritize problems first and then talk about projects. So that's the approach that we took with this. So what we did, and I apologize for some of the small print there. What we did is we took and we had a team in our transportation department of 6 people that we brought together and started talking about problems. And as you can notice, there are 3 scoring categories that we used. We used connectivity, grows the economy, and improves safety. Those are the metrics that we use to measure these problems. So we sat around in this group and we started talking about what we thought were the worst problems, and then we scored them. So I'll go through the list of problems that are over there on the left-hand side. And as you can see, the first problem that the team identified was I35 Corridor Deficiencies. So what does that mean? It does not mean adding lanes to the frontage road. What that means is it means improving our access to and from the freeway. In other words, how we get on and how we get off the freeway, entrance and exit ramps. Improving the things that serve our business that are associated, or serve our businesses that are associated with the interstate. That means frontage roads. That's how we access our commercial property along the freeway. And then it also means how we get across the freeway. Bridge, the RM620 bridge over I-35, that's one example. FM 3406, where it goes over I-35, which is going to be experiencing a significant amount of traffic in the next 30 minutes, I'd imagine. So you probably all know what I'm talking about. That's what we mean by H35 corridor deficiencies. Second, the Westside north-south connection. This nearly tied for first place. It was a virtual 2-way tie for first place. What this means is on the west side of our community, between I-35 and Palmer Lane, there is not a crossing of Brushy Creek. You cannot get across Brushy Creek with an arterial type road. It does not exist at this point. As a result of that problem loads up traffic on our east-west arterials, RM620, Sam Bass Road, FM 3406, because you cannot get north and south, so you have to go east and west to one of those north-south connections. So we ranked that problem as number 2, but again, it was nearly a 2-way tie for first. Third, intersection and corridor efficiencies. As the previous map I've showed, we've already spent a tremendous amount of money on different projects in our community. We've installed a lot of traffic signals that cost nearly $250,000 each. What this problem number 3 means is that means improving the efficiency of what we already have. Coordinating traffic signals so that you can get from one end of Gaddis School Road to the other without having to stop at 20 different signals. It means adding right turn lanes or left turn lanes where it's appropriate, so it improves the operation of that intersection without having to come in and do a full-scale widening of the road, which we quite frankly can't afford. Fourth, strengthen a west side east-west route. Who here has sat in traffic on RM620 waiting for the train to go by? Exactly. Who's sat on Sam Bass Road in a line of cars that you can't see the end of? A lot of us have. That's what this means. We need to take and do things to strengthen these east-west routes. But it's interesting, in order to do that, we believe that we have to do number 2 first, because it provides a relief valve, so to speak. If we get that north-south connection, now we can do the stuff that we need to do going east-west. Fifth, neighborhood connectivity. I'll give a couple examples of that. There are a number of roads in our community that part of a neighborhood that for some reason haven't been connected out to different arterial roads. And in some cases, they're only a small lot away from actually making the connection. Some examples of that include Logan is one, Chaparral is one, Texas Avenue is one, Mesa Park is one. There's quite a few of them. Some of you can probably think about it, or think about different ones in the areas where you live. Sixth, economic development and rehabilitation. So this was kind of a weird one. It kind of caught a few different things, and it was difficult to score this one as compared to, because when it comes to the things that you get the most points for, like connectivity, you can't really score real well on some of the economic development things, but we still felt that they were very important. For example, it includes things like Southwest Downtown, which that's a strong economic development project. I don't think anybody would argue that improving Southwest Downtown is all of a sudden going to relieve congestion on any of our arterials. However, we do believe that it will support economic development in our community. Similarly, you've got La Frontera La Frontera, that area up there, which is one of our strongest economic areas, or economic development areas. We think that it's important to have nice streets there. finally, pavement management, taking care of the pavement that we have already. That's something we're going to speak in depth about here in a little bit, but that's another thing that you can't really score that and score it evenly with some of these other projects, but we still thought that it was an important thing. 7, access control on existing arterials. So think about North Mays Street between US 79 and Old Settlers Boulevard. Who's been in the center turn lane getting ready to turn left into the YMCA and you're met head on by somebody trying to turn left into Sonic? That's what we mean by access control on these arterials. I'll tell you, that is probably one of the more difficult projects that we would have to do in our community. It is going to require a tremendous amount of participation from property owners. It's going to involve driveway consolidation. It's going to involve probably raised medians. It's not easy. I won't stand up here and tell you that it's easy, but it's something that's going to be needed, particularly as our population grows and the traffic on these arterials becomes more significant. We're going to have to take a look at this. Finally, number 8 is something that didn't really fit in one of the other categories, so we kind of made its own category, and that's a traffic management center. Something the city manager brought up to us that he was interested in is looking at what we can do to improve the operations of our existing facilities. And who here remembers, it's been a couple of years ago now, the grocery truck that caught on fire and closed I-35? Does anybody remember that? And remember what it did to our community in terms of the roads backed up, and so everybody's getting off that road trying to find a way around. Does everybody remember that? Yeah, that was a rough morning for us. So what a traffic management center will let us do is it allows us to have an operator sitting in an office that's got access to computer terminals that monitor these different intersections around town. So when an incident like that happens, in real time, they can change the timing on signals to reroute traffic. So in other words, we could take and detour traffic down Mays Street or along the frontage road, and we can time those signals so that traffic can move through there and get it moving rather than backing up on every road that we have here because everybody's trying to go the best way because there's no way that really goes at all.
And that's safer, I might add too, than having one of our uniformed officers standing out there hand directing traffic. So it's kind of a new thing that's growing around the country.
If we were to do that right now, if we were to try and do something like with what we have right this minute, we would have to have an individual person at every single intersection that we were trying to adjust, which for obvious reasons, that's not tenable. So that was our list of problems. And so then we came up with some solutions to those problems. And again, I apologize for the small font, but I'll go through these things. And I've got maps that kind of illustrate some of these solutions. Some of them are kind of self-explanatory, but the ones that actually have maps, I'll flip back and forth, so if y'all indulge me a little bit. So again, our first problem was I35 Corridor Deficiencies. So what we recommended is the first thing that we want to address there is between FM 3406 and US 79. So can everybody kind of think in their head where I'm talking about? What you have here, and I've actually got a map that shows this. So the left side of that page there is north. The left side is Old Settlers Boulevard, and to the right is US 79. As you're going north on I-35 and you cross over US 79, there's an entrance ramp comes on the freeway. Does everybody know what I'm talking about? And there's always a bottleneck there. Traffic always comes to a screeching halt because the reason that is just south of US 79, you have another entrance ramp, and so everybody comes along and they all have to merge at once. And that happens, and then you've got the people that are trying to get over to exit on that exit ramp. It just doesn't operate at all. So what we've proposed is eliminating that entrance ramp north of US 79, which, let me see if this laser will work, right there. Eliminating the entrance ramp and turn that into an exit ramp. So what does that do? That does a lot of stuff for us. That takes and puts all our traffic that's on the frontage road, it puts it on the frontage road way south of where it's getting on now. So now you've got a lot of traffic on the frontage road going past every one of those businesses. You know, I've been here for 5 years and I haven't driven by the building that Congressman Carter's office is in yet and not seen a for lease sign out in front of it. They've always got vacant space, and one of the reasons is because you can't access it real well. It's hard to get there. Similarly, I don't know about y'all, I work out at the 24-hour fitness over there in front of Pokey Joe's, and whenever I leave there about 8 o'clock in the evening, you turn around and come back and Arby's is closed. They're not open at 8 o'clock. It's dark. Well, if they're open, they haven't got any lights on. So, and it struck me as why is it that, and the reason is because you can't get there. If you're going down the freeway and you see Arby's, you already passed them. You can't get to them. You have to get off the freeway and circle all the way back around to get to Arby's. And so that struck me as, you know, we really can't access our businesses along the freeway. So we'd put traffic off on the frontage road way south of where it is now. And as the mayor points out too, who's ever exited right there in front of Fuddruckers to where it is now, and then you got this big swerve thing going on where people jump across 3 lanes trying to get into the parking lot of the movie theater to circle back around. That's pretty dangerous, and that would eliminate that as well. So you travel further north, and the existing exit ramp we would eliminate, and then we would put an entrance ramp there. So what does that do? That allows traffic to bypass that intersection. If their intent is to stay north on the frontage road, they just bypass the intersection with 3406 completely. They go underneath the bridge on I35 and they get right back off because there's already an existing exit ramp in front of the Harley-Davidson. Similarly, on the south side, you've already got the existing exit ramp. That's going to stay in place right there in front of Saltgrass. It might get widened a little bit or something like that, but it's going to stay in place where it is. There's an existing entrance ramp right there in front of the Shell gas station, just a little south of the IHOP I think everybody knows about. That one, we would move that, we would get rid of that, and we move it further down to here so that you're actually getting on the freeway. Again, we're keeping that traffic on the frontage road further longer, exposing them to more properties. In transportation planning, I've done it for about 7 years now in 2 communities, and in both communities that I've been in, I get calls all the time from banks. And the banks want to know, what is the traffic count in front of property X? And the reason they want to know that is because they equate the economic development potential of that property to traffic counts. If you don't have high traffic counts, they don't anticipate that you can really have a successful business there. This increases traffic counts on the frontage roads, which grows us in terms of economic development, which is something we want. So finally, we add a lane to the frontage road in each direction. I'd anticipate that's going to be on the inside of the frontage road, improves the access on the frontage road, and improves the ability for people to get it on and off and do what they need to do, and gives plenty of room to do that. So that's project number 1. Lori Hadley's always told me that that's real confusing. I hope I explained it well. So let me go back to our list. So problem number 2, a west side north-south connection. We talked with the city council about this at length. And the project that we recommend that we go ahead and take care of is Creek Bend Boulevard. Creek Bend is a arterial road that will connect from Creek Bend Circle south to Wyoming Springs or Brightwater in that intersection. We think that that's very important to get that connection made. We think that it's going to be necessary for anything that we want to do on RM620 later on. We got to have that connection first.
And the latest example of that now that we're moving through, we're replanning some of that, and it will leave Harryman untouched. Originally, one of the original plans for that connection was to intersect with Harryman, which caused a lot of anxiety in the community. So we've got a new plan that we've got back before the design engineers right now that would leave Harryman untouched. So we thought that was important for the community.
One of the reasons that Creek Bend was also our number 1 project, there's a couple different roads that you could argue you could do over there. Creek Bend we think we can make happen the quickest, which is something that we think is pretty important. Next, intersection and corridor efficiencies. As I spoke about earlier, this means improving operations at different intersections. It might be right turn lanes, left turn lanes, improving the signal or coordination plans where we can get you from one side of town to the other on the same road without having to stop at every signal. I know Councilmember Clifford is able to pull that off, and we're all mystified about how he does that, but nevertheless. A map that kind of gives us an idea. So we got things like Gaddiscool Road, coordinating the signals along there, US 79, University Boulevard, FM 3406, so that we could have some kind of signal coordination. I know it's the most frustrating thing in the world for me, and I'm sure that it is you too, that you go through one signal, it just turns green, and the very next one turns red. That's aggravating as can be, and this is going to fix that. In addition, right and left turn lanes, something that we've kind of embarked on here recently, and something we're going to do a lot more vigorously, something Gary wants us to really get after, is rather than looking at, let's make us a 6-lane divided arterial that's going to cost $20 million to build, how about do something at these intersections that are going to take and improve the operation of those intersections and buy us time and improve the operation? Councilmember Momi, yes, sir.
If you manage it going from east to west, do you have a problem going from west to east?
Shouldn't. I'll tell you what, well, let's touch on that towards the end. I'll get Chad to get up here and talk to us about that specifically. He can dive into that pretty deeply. I think probably more than we want to even talk about, but he can do that.
Quickly, I just want to add too on the turn thing. When I first got here, had I not been coming for the job that I came for, within 2 weeks I was tremendously frustrated just as a new member to the community on intersection congestion. And again, for what I've been doing my whole life, I look at, boy, there's a whole lot of people backed up trying to turn right, waiting behind the one guy that wants to go straight. So that's become a bit of a passion of mine with the guys, that we're going to go through a lot of the major intersections, and where it's not costly in the way of acquiring right-of-way or whatever, there's a lot of inexpensive solutions that we believe we can do either in striping or some fairly simple modifications to get traffic moving through intersections quicker. So that's one thing that we'll be looking at.
Okay, the next, strengthen an east-west route on the west side of town. So we recommended that we get after RM 620 and put a railroad, an overpass of the Union Pacific Railroad there. I know that every one of us has sat there waiting on a rock train to go by at a half a mile an hour for what seems like forever, and we need to fix that. This is, unfortunately, RM 620 is one of those projects that we could spend every dime we have out there if we needed to, or if we wanted to, and we still wouldn't completely solve the problem. So what we've said is that we need to go back and address that railroad crossing primarily, and then we'll deal with other parts of it in the future as they come. So the part that we're looking at right now is from the I35 frontage road there all the way over to Deepwood Drive, and then our intent is to come back and pursue construction of the railroad crossing at Union Pacific Railroad right there at Chisholm Trails. Everybody know where I'm talking about? It can.
And again, as John touched on earlier, some of these solutions are incremental. They're very, very long term, and we don't have the funds to do it, you know, in a shortest window that we'd like to. So in this case, we'll do the impact study on the full portion, and then over the next several years, we'll do the construction in incremental phases to where we hope and our intent is to relieve the congestion incrementally as we can.
And as I stated earlier, we feel like to construct this project, this is, make no mistake, it's going to be difficult to build this because we're in a very tight area in terms of right-of-way. So in order to build this, we think that we have to have Creek Bend built and open before we start construction on this. That way it allows people a way around. They don't have to go through that congestion if they don't want to. People going to the Round Rock High School have another way around rather than this is their primary or their only route. And the hospital too, yeah, Chad's right. We've got a lot of people from the emergency medical services have complained. You know, they've got a guy who's suffering a heart attack in the back of their ambulance and they're waiting on a train to go across. You know, I don't know about you, but if I'm the guy in the back of that ambulance, I want this project right now. So economic development, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on these projects to talk about them a little bit in depth. Chisholm Trail Road, well, we've been talking about that one for a while here, haven't we? I don't see Steve. I'm sure Steve's giggling if he sees me. Unfortunately, it's not very funny. We've spent a lot of time on that road. That road's in bad shape, and we need to get it taken care of. The plan right now is, and this plan does that. It gets us in there and get it taken care of and gets it over with. Right now, it's split into two phases, and just for all intents and purposes, I'll call it the Onion Branch, I believe. It's a little bit north of there, but that's the first phase of it. We anticipate starting construction with that beginning of the year. The second phase of it to the north has been delayed a little bit because we've been approached by a developer that wants us to consider a different alignment for the road that we think that we can make work, but we've still got to pin down that alignment, so that's kind of pushed it back a little bit. May Street. May Street, if those of you who've been watching, back in September, the City Council initiated a process to take May Street away from TxDOT between the limits of US 79 to the south to Hester's Crossing. The reason that's important, May Street is a state highway right now. It's actually the old, it's Business 81, I believe, or I'm sorry, State Highway 81. It's the old north-south route. It's the old I-35 is what effectively it is. It serves as a local street for us. It provides access to our businesses. It gets you back and forth within our community to different points within our community. So we think that it's important for us to maintain control of it. Problem is, since it's TxDOT's road, we can't do anything to it without TxDOT saying yes. The result of that is we've got a 4-lane section out there. The lanes out there are 12 feet wide each. Who's been frustrated sitting at the intersection of Mays at Main? Because that signal, you get one direction goes at a time. Well, the reason that is because you don't have a center turn lane north and south on Mays. Well, because it's TxDOT's road, we have to maintain 12-foot wide lanes. So there's no way to get a 5th lane down the middle of that road without buying property, and we don't want to get in the middle of that down there. That's going to get relatively expensive and unpopular very quickly. So what we're talking about here is come back, pick the curb up. We take over the maintenance of the road. It's our road now. We pick the curb up, scoot it back 2 feet in either direction, restripe it so that you've got a 12-foot lane in the middle, a 10-foot inside lane, and an 11-foot outside lane. We got enough room to put five lanes down that road, improve the sidewalks so they look a lot like what's happening in Southwest downtown now, street trees, lighting over the bridge, and something that the city council has expressed an interest in, put entryway features so that you know when you just arrived in downtown. Right now, it's hard to tell, are you in downtown or not? We're gonna have something goes over the road that says, you know, welcome to downtown or something like that. So you have to close your eyes to not realize that you're there.
And again, some of the changes that we want to make to relieve congestion overall through that area, we can't do while the road's under TxDOT control. So taking it back away from TxDOT allows us some different opportunities that aren't available to us otherwise.
The limits of that project, it's between basically bridge to bridge, from the Brushy Creek Bridge to the Union Pacific Railroad Bridge. The only difference is the Union Pacific Railroad Bridge, we're going to put pedestrian lighting on the bridge. Well, it's going to actually light the street up as well. So that, again, we've got a kind of nice feature as we come into town. It's attractive, looks nice. Southwest downtown, we've already completed one project down there, and that's the Brown Street, part of Baghdad, part of Harris Street. And we're currently, Todd's underway, nearly complete with Main Street between San Saba and Blair. What we said is we thought it's important to just get in there and let's finish it. This plan does that. It gets in there and just takes care of it. It finishes out Blair Street. It finishes out Liberty Street. It finishes out San Saba. We think it's important to go ahead and do that, button it up, and be done with it. We think that that's one of our big areas in downtown for development, and we think that those improvements will support that. La Frontera Streets. Who's ever nearly lost control of their car driving up there? Yeah, a lot of us. There's a lot of subgrade failures in that particular area of town. The material that road is built on is what people call fatty clays. They have a real bad problem of shrinking and swelling as they get wet. And so the result is the road goes up and down and up and down. And so we've got to fix that. The city council, and I don't see Cheryl. Cheryl, correct me if I say something wrong here, but we've already got, I think, $2.4 million in self-finance construction funds that we're using to fix those roads. That'll get us about halfway home. We're proposing to go ahead and add another $2.5 million to it to get us all the way home, and that'll go ahead and complete that. Again, I stated earlier, that's one of our prime areas for economic development. We got a large employer there, so we think it's important to go ahead and get that improved up there. Pavement management, I'm going to talk in depth about here in just a second. Finally, traffic management center. What that is what we talked about before, getting an operations center. All we're going to do now is just retain a consultant just to figure out what it is that we got and what do we need. So this map represents what it's going to look like. Again, there's the stuff on the right side of the map in green, that's what we've already done. And the stuff in red and then blue is what's going to be added with this program over the next 5 years. So pavement maintenance. I got to talk for just a second. Everybody's telling me I need to hurry up. I got to talk for just a second about pavement maintenance. And it's important to make this distinction. There are two types of funds that we can use to maintain roads in our community. The first one is the general fund. Everybody's kind of familiar with the general fund. The general fund is the council's account that they can pay for just about everything out of. Well, the important thing is that because that's the general fund, everything competes for money out of that fund. That's what we pay for local streets and local collector type streets with. The second one is the type B fund. Who can tell me what type B funds can be used for? Does anybody know? Go ahead, Mayor.
Major streets and arterials.
That's correct. And the distinction there, there's when we, good job.
Thank you.
The distinction there is that when we're looking at a road and ask the question, hey, can we use Type B funds for it? There's a two-pronged test that we use. Number one, it's got to be in support of a transportation project. Is it a road? Well, obviously that's the easy one. If it's a road, then yes. The second one, here's the more difficult one, is does it support economic development? And so I'll take the example of Nancy. If we come over to your house and pave your street in front of your house, are you going to all of a sudden turn your house into a hotel or a 7-Eleven or a restaurant? No. It does not support economic development to pave that local street with Type B funds. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So keeping that in mind. So for arterial streets, the streets that we use to fund Type B, the arterial roads and collector roads in our community, the commercial collector type roads, right now we currently have $500,000 to maintain those streets. We have about 377 lane miles, which results in a 52-year program cycle. So that means every 52 years we'll be repaving a road.
That's like not getting your oil changed every 52 years.
That's right. Yeah. So we needed to speed that up. So what our recommendation is to add another $1.5 million to that. That gets us to $2 million a year and results in a 13-year program cycle, which is a much more palatable cycle to get these roads repaved.
And that doesn't mean that we're going to hit every street every 13 years. Some streets we'll be able to do in 7 or 8 because they take different types of traffic. Some we'll be able to do in 15 or 18, but that makes sense for those roads. But it moves the whole program up significantly.
So this map, the blue represents what $500,000 a year would do over 5 years. The red is what you get whenever you add another $1.5 million to it each year. So a significant improvement for these arterial roads. The next one, general fund. Our current funding is $3 million a year. We have 920 lane miles of road. So that results in about 20 years, a 20-year program cycle. So every 20 years, we're touching your road again. What we're proposing, and you can see the difference there, and remember, this is general fund money, and so remember, everything's competing with these funds to do this. We're proposing $5 million a year, which would get us to about a 12-year program cycle. And a couple of maps that illustrate the difference. There, the blue represents $3 million a year over the next 5 years. You add to it the red. That's what we can do in 5 years if we add another $2 million a year to it. And
that program is not unique to Round Rock. Any community I've been in, you've always got growth needs, new road construction competing with maintenance dollars. And just to dovetail quickly on the mayor's comment, you wouldn't go buy a new car and not know that you're going to have to spend dollars going forward to correctly maintain that car. Same thing with our roads. It's an asset that the community has paid for, and it's got costs associated with maintaining it correctly.
All right. John and Gary, thank you.
thank you.
As you can see, they've done a lot of work getting this thing together, and you saw in a very short period of time, we really got down into some of the details the other day. The important thing I want you to keep in mind, or one of the important things I want you to keep in mind with what they just went through, we talked about the maintenance on the arterials, what's available to be maintained with the Type B funds. We've got that covered. That's not a problem. We've got funds built into their 5-year plan to do the maintenance on those roads. The problem was when we threw up residential streets and neighborhood streets, we don't have that covered. Where we went from blue to red with how much more we could do, that's really more of a goal, not necessarily something we have in place right now. And so that dovetails in what I want to spend a few minutes talking about is the upcoming election. Now, I want to make real clear, I'm not telling you how to go vote in the election. I'm just telling you why we're having an election and what the council's thought process was for putting these on the ballot. There are 8 charter amendments. Now, I call these fairly ministerial charter amendments. They're changing facts to email, things like that, making it so I don't have to sign off on something I've never seen before on plats. It's some things like that. There's 2 more substantive propositions on the ballot, and the election's at November the 8th on a Tuesday. The first one deals with this Type B sales tax that we were just talking about, that they gave a presentation on. What the proposition is it would expand the uses that Type B half-cent sales tax, the existing half-cent sales tax can be used for, that it can be used for things allowed by state law. Right now, there's about 500 and something of these transportation, well, they're not transportation, they're these Type B corporations around the state. To my knowledge, we're the only one that limits that half-cent to be used for transportation only. The other corporations around the state that collect that same half-cent sales tax can use it for purposes allowed by state law, which is primarily economic development purposes. So the proposition that's on the ballot would allow those funds to be used for other than just transportation improvements. Now, in looking at this, we wanted to make absolutely sure that by doing this, we would not be jeopardizing the transportation plan that's already in place. And so Cheryl's going to come up and show how this is working out, and that the 5-year transportation plan that they just came up with is not at all in jeopardy by us doing that. That will still remain the priority that we get that done. So Cheryl?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to just review with you really quickly. You know, the concern always is can we afford it? And basically what I've tried to do is just kind of create a simple slide to basically show that you could see that, and this doesn't show fund balances. I didn't want to bore you with all that good stuff, but basically what this is this shows here that the 5-year available funding is about $91 million. So that's all the sales tax that we would collect as interest and some other, basically those are your revenue sources. The current projects that we have that were already budgeted, we're about $30 million. The plan that what I call the FY 12 to 17 plan, which is what the staff just presented to you, was about $49 million with a remaining balance of about $12 million. So for instance, we currently spend about $500,000 through the general fund on economic development activities. If we were to actually transition that, you can clearly see here that we have about $12 million remaining balance, that we would still have adequate funding to go ahead and transfer those funds from the general fund to this fund and really not affect the fund at all.
Right, and that's an important point. We're already spending in the general fund about $500,000 a year on economic development. And so when we looked at this, we thought, well, wouldn't it make more sense to spend an economic development sales tax for economic development as opposed to the general fund? So if we did this, what we're talking about is that just for example, that $500,000 that we're spending on economic development already could be shifted to the economic development sales tax, which then would free up $500,000 in the general fund that we're spending already to be used for paving residential streets, for trying to get to those blue and red lines that we saw up there a minute ago, where we are at let's call it a deficit. We're not spending enough money paving and maintaining residential streets. So again, what this does, it allows us to spend economic development sales tax on economic development. So that's one of the reasons that the council brought this forward. The second proposition I want to get to is the 2% venue tax. I'm going to call Nancy up in just a minute. Nancy has done a fantastic job with the Sports Capital of Texas marketing theme in bringing in visitors from out of town into the city to play in local sporting events. And I call it the purest form of economic development there is, because they're coming into town, they're spending dollars, they're shopping, they're staying in the hotels, they're going out to eat, they're spending their money, we've imported the capital in, and when they're all done, they get in their cars and they go home. So Chief Williams doesn't need as many police officers to service them. The fire chief doesn't need as many officers. We don't have to spend the same amount out of the general fund servicing these tourist communities. That's why I think it's the purest form of economic development there is. The problem is that we're leaving money on the table every single weekend because we don't have an indoor facility that she can market, that we can continue to bring these people in to play indoor sports. And so what we've proposed, and the proposition is for a 2% venue tax to allow us to construct an indoor facility, a sports complex. This is not a Cedar Park Center. I'm going to let Nancy talk a little bit about what it is, but this is not a Cedar Park Center. This is not another Dell Diamond, which is like one big field. This is a multi-purpose, multiple court indoor complex. So before I bring Nancy up, Cheryl, why don't you talk a little bit about what the financials look like.
Sorry, there's 2 page down tabs. Pressed the wrong one. Had a 50-50 chance. Basically, what you have here is just a little snapshot of about a 5-year period. Again, tried to make this real simple. Just wanted to show you that this is just basically a revenue and expense analysis. That's all this is. This is looking at the revenues that we would currently have if we were to start collecting revenues in 2013, which is when possibly we could open this type of venue. You would see that we currently collect about $2.3 million. If we did elect for that venue to be enacted, that would generate about, that's about $663,000 for 2013. As you can see, over a period of time, that increases to a little over $700,000 plus. So the total revenues would be about $2.9 million. There's some expenditures there. We've anticipated all the expenditures. If you recall, in this fund, we also pay for all this includes the debt that we have for the Dell Diamond, plus all the operational costs that are assumed for the venue as well, with a remaining balance of about $200,000. You can see that's pretty consistent through the next 5 years. Again, when I talk about these revenues are pretty, as you know, we're really conservative in finance, so these are probably relatively conservative projections, so hopefully we would see additional revenues than what we see here. And I think you can clearly see that this is definitely something that is, we can definitely afford. It's very affordable within this fund.
Cheryl, I think she is very, very conservative. If I'm not mistaken, you don't even have any revenue built in for rental of the facility built into that projection,
That's
right?
correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Nancy, would you mind coming up? And what I want to talk briefly about with Nancy is the amount of money that's being invested in the community in the Sports Capital of Texas programs that she's been operating.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning. Welcome to the Sports Capital of Texas. I just want to briefly go through, this is a slide about the events we are currently hosting. We're able to bring in outdoor events, and it shows a very good diversity, and this is a conservative, again, on our estimates, but this is the number of participants we're bringing in and the number of guests that are included with them. For every participant, we assume 1.5 guests come with them. That is very conservative. So these numbers represent the direct spending. As the mayor said, it's new cash into the economy that would not otherwise have been here. And this benefits our local folks too. They get to stay home and play in these competitions, as well as bringing in good competition for them. So you can see we're having a pretty good number over here, which totals at the end of 2010 was $8.5 million. That is, again, just direct spending. There are no multipliers involved here. So that is what these folks are bringing into our economy. And I did a 2011 to date. We have one more event that will be held in December, National Baseball World Series. But you can see a lot of the same events because we're on our 1 weekend a month on the baseball and softball fields. The soccer fields, the leagues use, and we get allotted time there. And we're about sold out of all the field time that we have. So if you see this year to date, we're hanging about the same place, $8.2 million, and with our World Series, we'll bring that up to about $8.5 million. So what I did want to share is the future possibilities with the indoor facility. It opens up what I call a whole new universe to go out and talk to. I'm talking to them now, let me tell you, telling them there's a possibility in 13 we may be able to host their events. But as you can see, this is just a sampling. There's so many sports that are indoors. We don't have to worry about rainouts. Our hotels love it. Our hotels are very much behind this facility. We would be able to do all of these plus an array of others in the summertime, week-long events. So it's just a whole new world that we're not able to talk to right now because we just don't have the facility.
Okay. Thank you, Nancy.
Thanks, Mayor.
Well, real quick, would you describe a little bit about what we're talking about? I mean, we're still under design, but tell us a little bit about this center that we're talking about.
Great. Okay, we are definitely under design and concept. We're going to be going out and doing a market analysis to make sure we're building the exact right facility for our community. But overall, it will be a big gym so many basketball courts or volleyball courts, wood floor, high ceilings. I've done a survey with all of these users and gotten their requirements. And so it's just a big, open, clear span facility, wood floors, high ceilings, and then we'll figure out what to fill in after that.
Right, and we've got some really good help with this. What we don't want to do is go build this 6-court facility only to find out, had we done it 8-court or 9-court or 10-court, then we would have been able to host all these more. So we're putting a lot of legwork on the front end of this to make sure that we design it so that it gets maximum potential for the city.
Great.
Thank you, Nancy. And just again to clarify, that those $8 million she's talking about is direct money coming into it. So somebody like Joe Clifford may say, well, how's that going to help my business? Well, the odds are somebody's not going to go to dry cleaners while they're here. We know that. But all the people that received income that worked at businesses that benefited from that money, they may go to Joe. And so that's when that money, that's why Nancy said we didn't use any multipliers. That's where the multiplication starts, is when all that fund starts rolling. They take a cab from Renouche while they're here. It starts rolling over, and that's the important part of that. And those are very conservative numbers. We're trying not to oversell the impact of sports capital. We just want to say this is the direct investment that we had. Okay, so the election there is November the 8th. I urge you, get out, make up your mind, look at all sides of the issue, and then and get out and vote. Early voting, I believe, starts the 25th? 5th? 24th? Okay. Now, Michael, in case anybody hasn't noticed, we've had a little bit of a water emergency going on the last couple of weeks. So I'm going to ask Michael to give us a quick update on what's going on with that.
Okay, Mayor. As you said, the last couple of weeks have been interesting for the city of Round Rock and our neighboring communities with this water situation. Just to go back a few steps, the city of Round Rock gets their water from a couple different sources. Lake Georgetown and Lake Stillhouse Hollow, we get about 90% of our water from those two lakes. The other 10% comes from the Edwards Aquifer. So with a couple things that we've experienced over the last year, we typically get about 35 inches of rainfall in this area. We've had about 8.5 inches over the last 12 months. So as you can imagine, the lakes, Lake Georgetown and Lake Stillhouse Hollow, have dropped significantly. Lake Georgetown is about 35% full right now. Take that with the demand that our community, our high has been 42 million gallons a day, that the water demand over the past summer. We've had several days of 42. Our previous high ever was 37 million gallons a day. But we are way up there with our demand because of the drought and trying to keep our yards green and all that. So with the drought and the demand, it's really been taxing on our lake system. So as you've heard, we have a pump station at Lake Stillhouse Hollow that pumps water from Lake Stillhouse Hollow into Lake Georgetown. About 10 days ago, we had a failure at that pump station at Lake Stillhouse Hollow. So we were unable to pump water into Lake Georgetown. So when it's at 35% full and we're pumping water into it, and when we stop doing that, Lake Georgetown is going to do this. So Brazos River Authority manages that pump station, and there's 4 entities that own it: City of Round Rock, City of Georgetown, Brushy Creek Municipal Utility District, and Chisholm Trail Special Utility District. The BRA, at that time when the pump station went down, issued a Stage 3 emergency to all water customers. And what that means to us is we have to implement our most stringent measures in our drought plan. And that means we went into Stage 3, which means all outdoor watering was prohibited. Now, I will say our community has done an awesome job the past 10 days of cutting demand. When we were averaging, 35 to 40 million a day in that area, the past 5 to 6 days we've been averaging from 10 to 13 million a day. Our goal was to cut it in half, and we've done better than that. An update on the pump station, we have done some repair. We have 2 of the small pumps already running, so we're starting to push water back into Lake Georgetown now. We're actually pushing more than the demand of the 4 entities that are taking water out of the lake. So we're actually gaining a little bit of ground on Lake Georgetown. But the repair is not complete. We anticipate over the next week to 10 days we'll have that complete. Once that's done, we'll get all the pumps back and running, we'll test them, and once everything's working fine, then the BRA will look at lifting the Stage 3 emergency. When they do that, then the City of Round Rock will reevaluate where we're at to make sure that lake system is in good shape, because we're not looking at not only today, but we're trying to make sure when we start next summer, we're going to be in good shape. Typically, these lakes fill up about this time of year with winter rains, spring rains, but you look at the next 6 month forecast, and it's just not there. So we have to make sure we can meet the basic water demands of our community, and that's that domestic needs, drinking, cleaning, and those types of things. And that's why we've taken these precautions, and we've done the right thing. And I really want to commend the community for doing their part to help us get where we need to be. But once we pull the stage 3, we'll look at what we're going to come back to. I'm going to present to council here in the next couple of weeks a modified watering schedule. And what that means is possibly a once-a-week watering once we get through this repair at the pump station. So that's
Michael,
kind of
just
an
to
update.
put this in perspective, the 2 pumps that are pumping now that are back up and going are pumping
27 million gallons a day.
Okay, from Stillhouse into Lake Georgetown. We had been averaging 32 or so million gallons a day.
City of Round Rock only.
City of Round Rock only.
Mm-hmm.
So the only reason right now with those 2 up and going, the only reason that there's more water going into the lake than is coming out of it is because of these emergency restrictions. If everybody immediately went back to watering their yard like we were before, we'd be going the opposite direction again. So
That is correct.
that's correct?
That's correct. Right
You know,
now,
we've always wondered, because we've never really been able to do, it's not a good thing, but we've never really known how much of that water use is irrigation versus just strictly domestic use. Now we have a pretty good idea that there's an awful lot of irrigating going on out there. So, okay, thank you. All right, that's the last thing we were going to talk about. So now we're going to open it up for questions on any of these subjects or other subjects.
Councilman Bowman had a question earlier about the timing.
Oh, yeah.
If we could have Chad address that quick signal time.
So the question was, if,
Just describe how it works, how does signal timing work both directions?
okay, well, signal timing works, what it's called is a coordinated corridor plan. And so as you leave, say, Redbud and Gaddis Road, and you're headed towards I-35 in the westbound direction, by the time your group of cars leaves that intersection and gets down to the next signal, which I believe is High Country, is that right? Yeah. About 10 to 15 seconds before you get there, it turns green, allowing whatever queue has stored up at that intersection to clear so that you move through at speed at 40, 45 miles an hour. And so the lights would be timed along the corridor in that direction in the major movement. In the AM, that major movement is westbound. In the PM, that major movement is eastbound. So the goal in this program would be to get that platoon of cars all the way over to Mays without having to stop. You might have to slow down a little bit, but you time that system for that 40 to 45 mile an hour speed limit, whatever that signed limit is, that's what you want to time it for. Now the question was, can you get two-way coordination in the AM period? On Gaddis Road, it's unlikely that we're going to get full coordination in the AM or the PM peak period because we got about a 65 to 35 split. So it's a very strong split of traffic going in the westbound direction in the morning. And again, it's very strong in the eastbound direction in the PM. Does that answer the question? We would likely get some localized coordination in the eastbound direction in the morning. But let's say if you tried to go from Mays all the way to Redbud, you'd probably get stopped at A.W. Grimes at the very least. You might get stopped once or twice in there. We'd still be looking to get coordination in both directions as best we could.
And again, one thing I noticed, just again as a new resident to the community, when we talk about traffic capacity and moving traffic, I don't know that we need to add a lot of lanes from my observation. We move traffic really good from one intersection to the next, and then that's where we sit and wait. And then we rush real quick and get to the next intersection, and then we sit and wait. So that's why we're trying to clean up some of this congestion.
Well, and it's a very targeted rifle shot approach to some of these problems. Like you say, adding a right turn lane is a lot less expensive than adding an entire lane, but it's going to move an awful lot of cars out of there. And I think that will greatly enhance some of the problems that we have.
And the right turn lanes and the left turn lanes, along with this coordinated plan, is what increases the capacity at those nodes. At the intersection is the shared space of two roads, and those nodes are where That's the nexus of our congestion. So we don't have a problem between the nodes. We have a problem at the nodes. So you improve those, you get a lot more throughput.
Mr. Ziari.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you? Good morning, friend. How are you? I really anxious to come to see you guys, especially that particular transportation. You know who I am, my job. And then last week I came, I said, your office is, no, Mr. Ziari, you're too anxious. It's the next week. Oh. I said, just for laughing. Look, I've been in this business, taxi business, 31 years. I know, everybody knows something. I know what I'm talking about, transportation. First of all, I want to tell you and all the citizens of this town, guys, job well done, especially A.W. Graham, because everything, job very well done. Because every trip we picked up, we have a trip sheet. What time we picked up, what time we drop them off, time and everything, how much cost the customer. Customer are grateful in this area. They want to go to the, even Scott and White or Seaton or go A.W. Graham, Texas A&M, and then ACC. Costs much less. They're grateful to you. And time is money. Okay? But the point is, please, something in our life, business, and money is not the second issue. The job. Whatever you're doing now, we see it daily basis, what you're doing. I want to tell you, in my behalf and my staff behalf, thank you. And we better spend money, no matter bond or whatever, do such a very convenient thing for the citizen. And Mr. Mayor, I'm not telling you about this. I'm telling you the public should know. Because you know what you're going to be behind a closed door, what you're going to do. But the public should be aware of. Public tell who? To my drivers, thanks God. Last time I went to the Seaton Hospital, time in 2 months, 6 months, before you open, it says, took 45 minutes, not 20 minutes. Look, public going to be grateful what you're doing. You know, in the past, I don't want to bring it again. I said lots of things about my dear friend, police department and fire department and the others. Really, I know what I'm talking about. For 31 years, I see him 24 hours. If the old Persian says, if you know lots about friends, tell the lots of people. If you have something complain, go tell him, whisper in his ear. That's why I'm here. I was very ill, honestly. I said, no, Manoj, get up and go. And again, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ziari. Mr. Bradley, I think your hand went up.
The city just did FM 3406, right?
Say that again?
FM 3406 just got paved by the city.
That was the state.
Was that state? Okay.
That's
I just
state
had a
highway.
question about some of that work, but that's fine.
Other questions? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming out. Really appreciate it. Hope this was informative. And again, election coming up on November 8th. Go study the issues, and we encourage everybody to get out and vote. Thank you.